The Whig Party, the American political party that used to exist but doesn't anymore. Back when they did exist, they managed to get 4 presidents in the White House. The general consensus of historians is that these 4 presidents weren't particularly good. If you look at the average rankings of these presidents, you'll see that when surveyed, historians put the Whig presidents between 24th and 40th place, so in the bottom half. In one survey, John Tyler is placed at 22, but that survey was done in the 1940s and only 29 presidents were ranked. I see things a bit differently, however. First, we've got William Henry Harrison. He's probably the most well-known Whig because he famously gave a long inaugural speech in the rain, he got pneumonia, he died a month into his term, and as of 2023 has the record for the shortest presidency. When I was a kid, I thought that was fascinating and chose him as a subject of a presidential report I was assigned in middle school. One thing that stuck with me from middle school is that Harrison was the last U.S. president born as a British subject, as he was born in 1773. He was a famous general in the War of 1812, where he won the Battle of Tippecanoe. Thus, the Whig campaign slogan in 1840 was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Despite being the most famous Whig president, he's the least impactful president of them all. Libertarians and anarchists would rank him as S tier, because he did nothing and then died. Since his presidency was so short and uneventful, I really have no choice but to give him a C. I can't really say anything good or bad about him. His grandson, Benjamin Harrison, became president too in 1889, but that was decades after the Whig Party had disbanded. Speaking of grandsons, our next Whig president has a grandson who is still alive as of this recording. John Tyler was the Tyler in Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Today we have a clear presidential line of succession, and we take it for granted that if the president died, the vice president would become president. John Tyler was the one who established that the vice president would not just become acting president, but would become the actual president. He's responsible for Texas becoming a state. He signed America's first treaty with China, and he kept Hawaii from becoming part of the French Empire. His presidency was the most eventful out of the 4. Tyler is a very underrated president, and I'm putting him in A tier. Some people might object to me even including him in this tier list because he got kicked out of the Whig Party and was an independent for most of his presidency, but he was a Whig president for a little bit, so he counts. The Whigs nominated another general in 1848, this time a hero from the Mexican-American War, Zachary Taylor. Unlike William Henry Harrison, who had held multiple elected offices, Taylor had no prior political experience. His presidency was largely uneventful, like Harrison's, and he died in office. But his presidency lasted a lot longer, over a year. During his short presidency, he actually stood up to slave power and opposed the Western expansion of slavery. The pro-slavery movement in America was growing more militant and wanted to expand slavery into New Mexico, Kansas, Utah, and California. As a Southerner, he did more to stand up to them than the next 3 presidents, who were all Northerners. Taylor was the last Whig elected president. He was the last person elected president without the endorsement of either the Republican or Democratic parties, and was the last Southerner who was elected president while still living in the South until Jimmy Carter in 1976. I'm going to put him in B tier. He was good. He could have been great had he lived longer, but we're not dealing with could have been. Finally, we have Millard Fillmore. He's kind of memorable, if only for his name. His main accomplishment was the Compromise of 1850. This was a series of legislation, some of it pro-slavery, and some of it anti-slavery. A lot of people say that this compromise delayed the Civil War by 10 years, but I don't know if that's true. The compromise seemed to have inflamed tensions even more, as neither side was particularly happy with it. This compromise and another compromise in 1854, after he left office, led to the death of the Whig Party, as anti-slavery Whigs left and formed the Republican Party. He helped fight a fire in the White House, which is pretty cool. I'm putting him in C tier. He was the last Whig president. They'd run another candidate in 1852, but it wasn't him. It was a guy named Winfield Scott. And then a few years later, the party would just disband. So from best to worst, it goes John Tyler, Zachary Taylor, William Henry Harrison, and Millard Fillmore. 5 former Whigs were elected president as Republicans after the Whig Party disbanded. They were Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, Chester Arthur, and Benjamin Harrison. If I include them, it would go Lincoln, Grant, Arthur, Tyler, Benjamin Harrison, Taylor, Hayes, William Henry Harrison, and Fillmore. I imagine that my rankings will be a bit controversial, so if you think I got it wrong, explain why in the comments.